Hello, all. Welcome to Tea with G. I'm glad to be here on this. This is the third sunny day in a row in Seattle, and after we had about 2 months of no sun, everybody's out. It is a great celebration, and for those of you in the U.S. who are mothers, happy Mother's Day to you, and I hope you're all being treated very, very well as you deserve to be. And maybe some of you aren't even here because your kids are doing something for you. That would be wonderful. Anyway, hello all. And this subject's been on my mind of late that I called the two wisdoms. You know, in Buddha's teaching, about half of the things he talked about, the various sutras, the Diamond Sutra, the Lankavatara, and the Heart Sutra, it's pure non-duality. It is the transcendent wisdom. It's the wisdom that goes beyond, the prajnaparamita, that is beyond all opposites, that's beyond space and time, in which there is nothing but you exist, nothing but the self, or the non-self exists, just the pure emptiness or shunyata of being. The other half were all teachings about how to treat each other, how to be loving, kind, generous, the precepts about right livelihood and right concentration, and don't do any harm. Don't take anything that hasn't been given to you. It can look like a contradiction. That, well, if there's nobody here and there's nothing to, and nothing actually exists except the self, who's this other that we're taking care of? And that's a seeming, an apparent contradiction that can take a while to come to understand. But in the meantime, even though we can speak in terms of the absolute consciousness, that which is beyond all opposites, our experience is that of being a particular being in a world dealing with other beings. And the best way and that is our experience, isn't it? That is the experience that we have. The problem isn't that the experience we're having is somehow unreal. It's that what's unreal is the projection that we put on it, the illusion of it being something that exists separate from that self. Now, if I really acknowledge that the diversity that I experience is nothing but the manifestation of that one that is transcendent, and that one that is transcendent is myself, everything I do to everyone else, every thought I hold towards them, every emotion I hold towards them, every physical act of behavior I do towards them, I'm doing towards myself. I'm seeing them as separate, unless I am bringing them into my own heart. Love God and thy neighbor as thyself. It's love the truth, and then love the manifestation of the truth. Many of you know my own story about having that very profound spiritual experience at 19 years old, which had me just flying high for a couple of years, and then a crash that lasted a long time, a couple of decades. Because I was, like many on the spiritual path, that only got part of the teaching. I was stuck in the absolute. I thought it was just, well, whatever it is, I transcend it. I go deeper. I meditate harder. I do everything I can to completely rid myself of, all illusions. And it works to a point. I mean, I had different kinds of healings. I brought about healings in other people. But it was incomplete, and it felt that way. And I thought all I had to do was keep doubling down, and more absolute, more absolute, more absolute. It was a while before I encountered a completely different approach to it. This other side of the equation, where once you recognize the sheer oneness of all things, that you are not your mind, you're not your body, you're not your thoughts, you're not your experiences, you're not your memory, you're not any of your this life or any past lives. That's not what you are. Now the question is, well, then what is all this experience made of? And grasping that, it's like we completely remove ourselves from absolutely everything, find that which we cannot remove ourselves from, which is our own being, and then turn around and welcome all of it back in. You could think of it as an enlightenment of the mind, followed by the opening of the heart. And that was a much harder lesson for me to learn, because it was easy to avoid all my traumatic stuff, all the wounds, all bad habits, right? I could just kind of had a nice way to explain them away, right? And that I could transcend them. And many I did, right? But then when these things persist, you recognize, wow, there's a whole lot more here than I have. If truth is going to be truth, right, it's going to be comprehensive. It's got to explain everything. You can't just settle for explaining things away. Oh, it's an illusion. Well, where does the illusion come from? Who's having the illusion? What is the illusion made of? What is an illusion, after all? And an illusion is something projected on something else. Well, what's it being projected on? These became really deep questions, and the more I pondered them, the more I began to see less and less of a separation between anything. And that experience when I was 19, I recognized that there was that the truth of everyone, that the genuine nature, the actual reality of your being was absolutely untouched. I called it, and still call it, original innocence. It's untouched. It's still whole, it's still complete, it's never been tainted, it's never been lost, nothing's ever happened to it. Now, how do you get to that? I think everybody here hears me say that and resonates with it, recognizes the truth of it. And then you turn around and you look at your life and you go, this is not what I'm experiencing. This is not what's going on in my life. This is what has to be reconciled, this apparent contradiction. Because in fact, it isn't a contradiction. It's only a contradiction because the mind always wants to put things in terms of one thing or another, which is why it's so easy to get stuck in the absolute. And I don't want anybody to get stuck in the absolute. they would say in Zen, he stinks of Zen, or he stinks of enlightenment. And oftentimes when somebody would get into a state like that, out came the Zen stick, and they get a whack, or they get their nose twisted, or they get pushed down a well or something to bring them back to the true wisdom, the true prajnaparamita, which is this dance between opposites that orbit around that which has no opposite. It's pure emptiness in Buddhism. In Advaita Vedanta, it is the self, or Brahman. It is the Holy Spirit, or Christ consciousness in mystical Christianity. It is the prophet in Sufi and God. But what it's pointing to is the nature of all things. So the real nature of everything you're experiencing in your life right now, everything is Buddha nature. If you don't see it that way, if you think it's a problem or it's oppressive or the like, you're simply not seeing it correctly. And the not seeing it correctly is the illusion, not the thing itself. We're walking out in the desert and you see the mirage. The mirage isn't there. The desert is there and it is hot and you are thirsty. That's all there, but the mirage isn't. An illusion is something that is projected on that which actually is. And ultimately, we see that the illusion of the world is simply a projection onto my own self. Buddha nature, Christ consciousness, pure awareness. So, pay attention to simply the process and practice of our heart's opening. That's become my emphasis as of late, because it's what we need. The addictions are at an all-time high. I mean, it's epidemic level. I'm not just talking about the Oxycontin and drugs and alcohol, that sort of stuff. I mean, the food is it. I mean, the companies have scientists that are doing everything they can to mimic our natural, the fact that we're naturally drawn towards certain foods that are nutrition rich, and so they make it look as if it appears to be nutrition rich, and it isn't. It's highly addictive. The way social media, like Facebook and Twitter and all those things, are designed. They're designed to be addictive. They're designed to keep you going. So what is that? What is it that allows us to become so addictive? Well, we're disconnected. It used to be that human beings we were simply governed by nature. Nature kept everything in balance. We ate. There wasn't any more. We went through periods of natural periods of fasting and the like. And so there's a part of us that doesn't grasp the fact that you're not going to starve. It still assumes that there's going to be a great deal of scarcity, and for most of us, all of us here, that isn't the case. There is for some people, but it isn't the case for us, and yet that's still what's going on in our bodies. Because we can't go back to the point where nature was controlling everything, we have to learn how to do it ourselves. We have to learn how to find our own balance. And I think the real essence of the epidemic level of it is the fact that we're disconnected. We're all lonely. We've become isolated. We've become separate from each other. Our interactions are, through mediums like this. We don't an enormous amount of alienation. And of course, the most fundamental one of all was that original existential trauma that we all suffered, where we got disconnected from our souls, from our true nature. And that's the disconnection that genuine spiritual practice heals. That practice of opening your heart is a reconnecting to that part of you that's never been lost, that original innocence, but has been buried, right, because of just traumatic events. It became painful to love. It became painful to trust. It became painful to express yourself, to just be who you are. And so all of our self-esteem and self-love became all conditional. It became all tied up with how well we did for whoever. So the opening of the heart is the other side of the equation. That's why there's three different schools of Buddhism with different kinds of emphasis: the Mahayana, the Theravada, and the Vajrayana, I think it's called, which is Tantra, right? Buddhist Tantra, which is all simply opening our hearts. And how do you do that? Well, the first thing you do, you simply start by willing to be present with your own feelings. When you have that impulse to check your phone or to, to eat or have that, fourth glass of wine, or you're feeling that impulse, stop for a moment. Sit with that. Where is this craving coming from? And remember that the source of suffering, according to the Buddha, was the craving. It was the attachment and aversion. It was the grasping. It wasn't desire per se. It was the grasping, right? That was trying to fill up a fundamental disconnect that happens to all of us. It's just a part of human life. It's the way it is. It is unavoidable. And crossing that gap to the other side of pure contentment is the whole mission. It's the reason you were born a human. It's why we're here. So it just starts with simply being able to be present with your own feelings, and it then gradually expands to be present with others. And a certain equanimity begins to emerge. Less reactive, more pensive, more contemplative, more willing to hear all the different sides, less opinionated. So I'm going to let it go at that. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. I find when I really look, I find all these little places where my heart's still closed. I go, wow. And you can't fix that in the absolute. It's very earthy. It's very right. It's very right here. Anyway, let me go and say hello to everybody. Hello, Rosario, Madrid, and SP Weasel, Andy, in Texas. There's Ava. There's Ursula in Portugal. Hello, Ursula and Robbie, Romania, and everybody's enjoying the fine day in Europe. Fernando, hello to you. There's Daryl. Happy Mom's Day. There's David and Elaine from my buddies in England. Oh, wow. A nice long one from Jonas. Hello, Jonas. Long time no see in regards to comments. You and Muji are, till this day, the two people I've never hugged or met in the same physical space. Comes to my heart and mind. Namaste, beloved GP. I have so much I need to share and have your intuition and heart answering to after the most intense and also emotionally traumatizing winter and spring in many years. The woman I talked to for years isn't who she seems to be, and I ended up losing my ground after time to restabilize after being so PTSD'd and destabilized. Of course, I'm not that stuff, but ended up feeling and identifying as the body-mind, even though I knew and could sense truly that no, it isn't true. And it has been such a hardship on all levels of the human experience. Feel like I'm coming back and the more daily flow of beingness again. I wish I could have a one-on-one with you. I really wanted that while it was going on, but money as usual, I couldn't. I knew and know. Did it finish somewhere else? Yeah. Joining on YouTube instead. Love you, GP. So happy to be here right now. Actually took a microdose of mushrooms just now. Second time in half a year. Sundown and listening to the Lord speak through you. Sacred. Well, thank you, Jonas. Well, it's very much what, I was so dense at the beginning. I just ignored all of the cosmic 2x4s I was getting because I just kept going back to I thought, the solution is I just get back into the absolute and all of this will vaporize. Sometimes it did, which kind of primed the pump, right? We cannot get through life without this happening. It's supposed to happen. It's the stuff that breaks open our hearts. The key is to be willing to be completely with your humanness, and in that find the beingness that is beyond all pain and suffering. It's in that embrace of the inevitable disappointments, the inevitable, praise and blame, love love and hate. You're the best thing that ever happened to me one moment, and you're the worst thing in the world the next. This stuff just happens. It, if we don't grasp, if we recognize that when something is here and it's relatively permanent, it's an enormous blessing, right? Like a relationship that can last a long time, and they can, with the proper care and feeding, they can. But without that, they don't. And people change, people grow, people go in different directions, and the important thing is to keep yourself from judging, from criticizing, both her and you, and recognize, unless she was just downright deceitful, that we don't really until we have really come deeply into our own hearts and they're open, we do not see things as they are. And it's partially we have to see it through the heart, and partially we have to see it through the eyes of non-duality. It's the wisdom and compassion that has to go back and forth. And so completely embrace the destabilization, the fact that there was something that you thought was really solid in your life, that was trustworthy, and that meant a lot to you. A kind of love there. I don't know if it's romantic or just, a deep friendship. I don't really know. It doesn't really matter, because whenever there's any kind of deep connection like that, a circuit forms. A connection between individuals. Our energies merge and they form a circle. A third thing emerges. And whenever that, and so that your entire energy system and nervous system on every level now adapts to that, and it becomes it becomes part of you. It's not a small deal. Right? If it's a small deal, then it doesn't hurt if somebody just wanders away. It's not just the hurt. It is the as you felt, the destabilization, and it is destabilizing. It's like anytime you get used to something and then all of a sudden it isn't there, right? No matter what it might be. And when it's a personal relationship like that, there's a dimension on the energetic level where there's a bonding that takes place, and when that falls that falls apart for whatever reason, the entire system is destabilized. Now, I would highly recommend, maybe even insist, that you don't let your mind come up with stories about who she is and why she did this and anything at all. Put all of that aside and just stay with the feeling in your body. Let it heal. The body will restabilize. The more stories you tell about it, right, the more the destabilization continues. It actually keeps it in place. But throw all the stories out. You don't really know. No, none of us know what happened. None of us can actually grasp the complexity of anybody's life for something that could throw it off, to make them seem like they weren't what you thought. Maybe they were exactly what you thought, and they're not anymore. Right? So put the stories aside. Don't try to come up with an explanation. Don't try to figure out the details. What happened? Did I do something wrong? Is she not who I thought she was? Has she gone to the dark side? All of that is useless. It's the mind attempting to keep you from feeling just the sense of loss, of grief, and of destabilization. It thinks it's helping you by trying to get you to not feel it. And so it comes up with all these reasons, and it'll keep you spinning and spinning. And sometimes, some people can get hurt badly enough, they don't recover their entire life. It just walks around. It's that kind of a trauma. I don't want this to become a trauma. So just be with the sense of grief. Be with the destabilization. And don't place any blame on anybody, because there isn't really anybody to blame. This stuff just happens. This is the nature of human existence. And if we can open our heart to the true nature of human existence, you will find your peace. You will find that the contentment. You'll find just it's hard to describe. It's just, yes, this is the way it is, and you walk with the Buddha down the middle way. Does that help, my friend? Hello, Lisa. Lisa in Canada. Indus, we don't know what it is that we are aware of, said Alan Watts. Yeah, we can look at it at different levels. On one level, you can think, the body is aware of absolutely everything that the senses are capable of picking up. More exists than what is in our senses. So we can think of our conscious awareness of that which is we're aware of up here. Then we can think of all the stuff that's out of our awareness that's operating down here, which is for the most part running our lives, which is why we need to get it from the unconscious into the conscious. And then there's the Buddha nature. There's the pure awareness, which is not simply related to the content we may or may not be experiencing. It is the nature of existence itself. That awareness is the substance of being. And things that aren't in awareness, in that sense, do not exist at all. They come into existence and out of existence faster than you can count. Right? And they are simply arising out of awareness, made of awareness. So we don't want to confuse the pure awareness or Buddha nature with our psychological model of, conscious mind, subconscious mind, and unconscious mind. That's useful for healing and for opening our hearts, right? But it doesn't really capture the nature of awareness itself. It's why it's often said that it's space-like. And, we have an expanding universe, right? Have you noticed that it keeps expanding, but we never run out of room? There's always space there to receive it. Awareness is like that. It has no dimensions. It isn't growing or expanding. There's no conscious or unconscious part of it. It's simply the ocean in which we fish are swimming. And the fish are made of the ocean. As were we. We just, created this little sack with ocean water so we could walk up onto the beach. We took the ocean with. We never really left. Hassan, hello Lisa. And there's Plan in Sweden. Hassan, we escape our painful emotions by relying on outer substance to relieve the anxiety, the uncertainty, and the fear. Yes, that's exactly what happens. And it takes loving kindness to break that spell, the willingness to be with painful emotions. And for the most part, that takes a teacher, sangha, groups, other people's support, like we have here. The willingness to be with it, because it's not easy, and we've developed all sorts of habits to keep it from happening. And those habits are powerful. I mean, they're ingrained in the body. They're compulsions. You can find yourself in the middle of one and not even remember how you got there. And all of a sudden you're trying to get to level 16 in Minecraft or something, right? And games are addictive. They're made to be addictive. And they keep us from they not only keep the painful emotions at bay, they keep us from having genuine contact, genuine connection, genuine pleasure of being human. So we have to traverse this territory. We just have to. There is no other way. And if that really does sink in, it can engender the kind of conviction and devotion that will win the prize of genuinely awakening. And what genuinely awakening means is that it is the end of all suffering. And now that is a goal that I think we can all get behind. Happy Mom's Day, yeah. Happy Mom's Day to from Brinks. Hey, Peter, my friend in Italy, Hassan. I think, GP, the scariest feeling is losing consciousness, dying. Yeah. How one sit with this feeling if the feeling is exhausting and overwhelming? Well, practice. You sit with the feeling, it gets a little bit overwhelming. Stay a little bit longer, and then pull out of it. Right? We don't have to. This isn't like some of the really strict, like Rinzai Buddhism, right? Where if you even move, you get the stick. You can't scratch an itch. I mean, it's not like that. It's much more gradual and much more gentle and much more coming from the heart. So notice that the scariest feeling, losing consciousness, is only an idea in consciousness. If you lost consciousness, this idea wouldn't be there, and there'd be actually no experience of suffering. So the fear of losing consciousness can only exist in consciousness, making it a speculation, right? Basically, scaring itself to death, creating its own horror movie, and then running it constantly. And yeah, the fear of dying. Right? How do you overcome the fear of dying? Well, you have to either you discover that, okay, we're all going to die, and you use that as a way of prioritizing your life, or you discover through inquiry and contemplation that there is no death. That only applies to the body. And in fact, if you look at the body, it doesn't even apply to the body as a whole. It's applying to, all sorts of different piece parts of you. Some of the cells, millions of cells since, satsang has started, I don't know, 10, 50 million cells have died and been reborn in the last half hour. It's like, wow, okay. So what then is death, right? This is the kind of contemplation we can do that will make a huge difference and open it up to the genuine understanding, not just a conceptual understanding, but the genuine understanding that which is aware of all of the birth and death is not subject to birth and death. It is timeless. It has no beginning. It has no attributes whatsoever. And not having a beginning, it has no end. Timeless, not eternal, because even eternal is the idea of infinite time. It is dimensionless. So you can't call it infinite. You can't call it finite. You can't call it eternal. You can't call it temporal. It's beyond all of that. And this is discovered through deep contemplation and meditation. And then it is embodied in the open heart that embraces even the scariest feeling, and then encourages and assists as you practice the embodiment of that by being with that feeling. Any feeling comes up, it's exhausting and overwhelming. Okay, there's an exhausting and overwhelming feeling. What is that feeling? Let me take away the words exhausting and overwhelming, because that's an idea I have. Oh, it's going to overwhelm me. Well, will it? Or am I just afraid it's going to? Well, there's only one way to find out. So I'm going to just stay here a little bit longer and see what it does. Right? I'm going to be with the feeling itself. Right? And if I find myself getting really, really tired, I go, oh, okay. Am I really exhausted? Or is this just another way that it's trying to keep me from actually connecting it up with whatever it is that is causing this fear? And I have it on good account that if you do that, on the other side of the fear is peace and power and authority and an intelligence that is incomparable. It's on good authority that that's the case. But you have to go through these. You have to get past the dragon. So remember that we're not doing this solely just because we want to sit with the unpleasant stuff. We're sitting with the unpleasant stuff to get to the real stuff, to bring love, loving kindness, and peace to our own nervous system, our bodies, our hearts, so that we can open it to the real treasure, which is also there. But this stuff is just in the way. So if we remember that, oh, right, it isn't, that isn't the end all. It's not being with the feelings, right, is a means to an end. Understanding the cause of suffering is the means to the end of suffering. Which means we don't just approach our feelings as a mean to an end. There's a certain amount of presence that has to be, because this is all we have right now. But you remember that, right, that this isn't all there is to it. That the motivation behind spiritual inquiry and spiritual practice is total liberation from all suffering, for myself and all beings. Right. And they tell me this is how you do it. Okay, I'm in. And then if it gets too overwhelming, right, if it's just, the body's freaking out or something like that, stop. Take a walk. Breathe. Try a walking meditation. Right? Try tapping. Right? Try other things. Right? There's there's no rules here. It's like, okay, sit with it, buddy. I'm not going to hold your head underwater. Right? Just get to know yourself. Become curious about why all this is happening, and also become inspired by the potential for a full liberation, for full awakening, for happiness that has no end, because it had no beginning. Does that help, Hassan? Hey, Jonah says, yes. I've noticed moments, glimpses, hours of it all opening up onto and into me when the surrender of the true prayer of the heart took place all by itself. Well, being with her, yes, the heart and non-duality, yeah. And then Hassan, love and hate, but we are beyond duality, our essence. We are beyond both non-duality and duality. You can't have the word non-duality without duality, can you? So remember, right? This is beyond emptiness and form. Even emptiness is empty. Right? Non-duality can be just another word, another concept. This is beyond all of it, which means that what you are looking at is simply the self. And from one perspective, it's dualistic. That is, you and I are having a conversation here. And from another perspective, I'm having a conversation with myself, not me, the personal I. The I is simply manifesting itself. Those are both there. And they dance back and forth, right? In appearance, because it's never anything other than that. It's always the non-dual, but the non-dual always appears as the dual. So you cannot separate the essence from the appearance, the emptiness from the form, or the form from the emptiness. You can't. You cannot do it. The mind tries to do that. So the essence is non-dual. Right? But the essence of what? The essence of all this, which is the appearance of duality. Right? It's so subtle, because our minds want to latch onto one side or the other. Right? We're either stuck in the relative or we're stuck in the absolute. But the heart represents that open wisdom that sees both, and sees both as one, and yet never loses the both. Music Music expresses itself in an infinite number of ways, and the essence of every song is music. And every song is music. You can't separate them. Because the nature of being is to manifest itself. Therefore, it is always manifesting itself in what we would call beings. Seeing them as separate entities is the illusion. Seeing them as a unique, individualized manifestation of that same essence, like every song is a manifestation of music, now you've got to the heart of it. And you can feel the heart respond to that. Whereas the heart kind of closes when it's just the non-dual and the relative, and trying to get out of the relative into the non-dual. You can feel there's no heart in that. Continued. That's why some great masters, the self has no karma, the true consciousness has no karma. It's true, it doesn't. Karma does not apply to it. Cause and effect does not apply to it. Cause and effect is actually an illusion. Right? But we experience cause and effect. Right? And to look at it as such, it really appears as this causes that, causes that, causes that. Right? And what's the Four Noble Truths? The cause of suffering. That's number 2, right? Even though the one of the versions of Buddha's enlightenment I heard was the final straw fell when he saw the causality, cause and effect, were a projection of the mind and did not exist. And then he comes out of that experience, and what's the first thing he talks about? The cause of suffering. There's no contradiction there. There's no contradiction. He saw through all of it, and all of his suffering ended. And now he goes, okay, how do we eliminate suffering? Which is what he was after in the first place. He didn't go seeking enlightenment. He went seeking the answer to suffering. What was the cause of suffering? Well, the cause of suffering was ignorance. It was a mistaken notion about who you are. And which meant that since it did have a cause, it would have a beginning. He would have an end. It would have a cause. The effect would be suffering. If you end that cause, suffering ends, and what remains is the eternal happiness that has no cause. God, I hope I'm explaining this well. It's so subtle and so hard to put into words, because we don't want to get stuck anywhere here. The moment you're stuck, you're going to suffer, and that includes being stuck in the absolute. The absolute informs the relative. To see that there is no cause and effect doesn't mean you ignore cause and effect. It doesn't mean you can walk out in front of a bus and not expect to get mushed. For me, I ruminate as the result of my trauma. Yes. And this is the heart of it. We have to get back to the wounded part of us that we all experience. This is the existential crisis, the existential trauma that creates the experience we're all having. And it precedes this life, by the way. The trauma we experience in this life, if I may go so far as to say this, is a manifestation of something that is deeper than even this human life. It is a manifestation. But the point is that true liberation comes from walking this middle way, from coming to terms with suffering. You can't deny it. Look around. There is suffering. The first noble truth, there is suffering. When you sit down now, Hassan or Jonas, when you sit down with those feelings, right, recognize you are experiencing firsthand the first noble truth. There is suffering here. Okay, what's the cause of this suffering? It's not because this woman betrayed your trust, or because there's a fear of death. It's not that. You can put all that aside. It's clinging. Clinging to what? Clinging to life. If I'm not clinging to life, there's no fear of death. If I'm not clinging to some idea of what I thought she should be, there'd be no sense of loss. There'd be a disappointment, but no suffering. You'd feel the full weight and pain of it. Of course, when we die, you're going to be letting go of everyone you know, everything you love, everything you care about. It's going to be gone. Just like when somebody dies and you're still here. So, opening our hearts to the wounded part of us, rather than just try to explain it away metaphysically or through non-dual speak, right, is the path. That's the path. It is through the traumas that we've experienced that we get to see how this whole human mechanism works, and begin to see that the trauma is for the body-mind mechanism. It isn't for me. And I discover the original innocence that has been there the entire time, that has simply been veiled by the various kinds of traumatic energy that has caused the conditioning, that has caused the aspects of the persona, which that we then identified with, and it became the sense of self. Turning back around and walking back down that is where all the stuff comes up, and fear and exhaustion and overwhelm, because it's just protective mechanisms. That's all it is. It's the dragon guarding the virgin and the gold. And you're both. Jonas, stay with the feeling in my body. The stories keep in place. Lots of stories come up. Yep. Still does not, but as loaded as clingy or ruminating anymore. Yeah, just don't pay attention to the stories because they're not true. They're not true, so don't pay attention to them. They're an attempt simply to find an explanation that'll make me feel better. That's all it is. It won't solve anything. And by feel better, I mean not feel as much pain, but it doesn't heal. The mind at work. I felt and observed and had it stop again and again and again and just keep going. Felt and observed and had it stop again and again. Yes. Not trying to stop it, but sometimes it just stops. And sometimes it just keeps going. That doesn't matter. Whether the mind's going or not is the source of your happiness. Boy, you're in trouble. You're going to try to stop it, and find the more you try to stop it, the worse it gets. Serenable, yes, gee, thanks. You're welcome. And it's very subtle. In a way, I can't escape my pain, but in this way, I escape my painful emotions. Yes, but you can only escape them so long, right? There are ways. I mean, it's what I do all day, every day, is teaching people how to do it so it isn't overwhelming. It doesn't have to be that hard. Right? Sometimes it's necessary to have a long retreat, but not right in the beginning. Don't start out on a month-long or a 3-month retreat. Sometimes we need to be in an environment with others around us and a support system and teachers, and completely disconnect, completely off-grid from every other part of our life, where everything is just taken care of. You're in complete silence for the entire period of time, so that you actually can find that you can do this. You can go there. Because in our daily lives, okay, I'm going to do my half-hour meditation or my hour meditation, or, an hour in the morning, or whatever it is. We have lives, right, that are going on, right? And you'll find that you'll be sitting and meditating and say, oh yeah, I got to do something. That'll be intruding. It's very difficult for that not to happen. But if you're at some place, even say for a morning, a Sunday morning, you go for a 3-hour meditation. For that 3 hours, you're not doing anything else, right? You'll feel the restlessness, right? And you go, oh, it really wasn't about having other things to do. There was just this restlessness there. All right, let me go into that. And it's in an environment where it's safe and supportive, and you can do it. So, but at home, on playing the home game, then it's absolutely necessary. What I recommend people do is set a timer, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, right? And just say, okay, this is all I'm doing for the next 15 minutes. And then say, oh, did you turn the iron off? What are we going to have for lunch? And now you just noticed how just distracted the mind always is. But if you're committed to that chunk of time, then you're just going to notice it. Oh, right, there it is. Well, what's behind that? What is it trying to pull me away from? And it can actually now deepen your practice. And then you'll find yourself, oh, for the last 20 minutes, I have been thinking about lunch or whatever. The moment you see it, in that moment, you're the Buddha. You've just awoken. Oh, there it is. Pull yourself back. Pull yourself back. Pull yourself back. Until the emotions are not felt, I think, yes, you will continue. Yeah, you have to, right? Let's just make up our mind to do it and find the gentlest way to go about it. Jonas, this was the best advice I've had during this whole time, and together with another thing you shared about 2 years ago, I've written down in my saved papers. I'll rewatch this, write it down, and feel it. Feel you, Hassan. CPDS2. Jonas, the cycle will repeat. Yeah. Faith. Hello, Faith. Hi, my sheik. I lost my job, the source of money, and the reason to stay here in Europe. I accept the loss. However, I wonder how to do action while surrendering. I want to reach that calmness in front of the storm. I want the freedom, but I also want a solution. I'm wondering how to do an action while surrendering to what is. React out, peace, not panic. I'm so afraid. I'm so curious about what is going to happen. I feel like throwing in the towel. I just want to float. I want liberation. Well, that's very good. It's very good that you want liberation, because these are the things that remind us, yeah, that's what's actually important. Now let's just deal with the big thing here. You know how to take action. You know how to do the resume. You know how to take action, right? So that's not a problem. You say you want to do how do you do action while surrendering? The act of acting is a surrender, right? Surrendering isn't just sit there, oh, I surrender what's happened. It's not resignation. It's a deep acceptance that, okay, life has thrown this at me now. This is my practice. This is where I am going to gain my liberation. If it wasn't the case, life would not be handing this to me. Now I'm feeling panic in my body. I would much prefer to be feeling peace, but I'm feeling a sense of panic. Okay, yeah, it's fearful, right? I lost this. I was depending on it. I want to stay here in Europe. So, yeah, this is a disappointment. So feel the panic, which is the mind spinning out all the horrible things that could go wrong. So just, okay, the panic is the mind telling a story. Does the mind ever tell the truth? It's not that it's a liar. It doesn't know the truth, so it can't tell it. It's not like it's purposely deceiving you, because then it would have to know what was true in order to deceive you. It's just making up stories because that's what we've been taught to do. And that stimulates the panic. So stay with that feeling of fear and just notice that it's a dance between the body and the mind. The mind is reacting to these images. And then very gently pull yourself away from those images and open your heart to that feeling of fear. Not saying I want to have peace. It's like peace is my nature. And right now, my body is afraid. My mind is afraid. So I'm going to open myself up completely in loving kindness to both of them. And say, yes, of course, I understand you're afraid. Yep, this feeling is running through us. Let's be with it together. And the mind increases the panic by saying, well, you're just going to react out of fear and do something stupid, which is just another story. You're not going to do that. You're going to take the action that you need to take, and you're competent, right? And so you don't let the mind color this at all. And remember, the liberation you desire, and you do desire it deeply, I know you well enough to know that desire for liberation is what is creating these circumstances. This is why life, it's not punitive. It's not because life is trying to mess you up. It's because you want to be liberated, and this is how it's done. It is through the deep contemplation of your true nature and the active engagement with human life as it is. This is how it's done. And nobody gets out of it. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. New stuff comes up. Some other thing just kind of throws you off. And or something pops up that you didn't realize you were doing or thinking or acting out, and you go, oh dear. Thank you for waking me up. Thank you. Thank you for waking me up. And this is, you've asked for liberation. The moment you ask for it, truthfully, in your heart, it starts to come. But we have to become liberated from the mind and its stories and the various emotional experiences that it creates because of that, until we are completely liberated from all of the story. But remember, even a tiny step of liberation is the Buddha step. Is that helping you, Faith? My dear girl. Jay, is it a good sign if you don't feel like talking that you're stuck in something and probably all the talking is going on inside the head? Usually it feels like it's heavy inside when something is, where's the rest? Being held on to. Yes, it's going to feel heavy when something's being held on to because it's heavy. You're carrying it. Oh, okay. I'm carrying, yeah, it's heavy. What am I carrying? Now that's the question. And sometimes, you don't feel like talking, it's just heavy. There's no energy for it, right? So turn towards that energy, turn towards that feeling, turn towards that heaviness. Go, what's heavy here? What's heavy? What am I carrying that I don't need to carry? Or what part of me is carrying something, right, that it doesn't need anymore, but doesn't know it can put it down. Doesn't know it has that capacity. Maybe it's holding on to something because it thinks it's protective. It usually is the case. So, yeah, all the talking going on inside the head, But that wouldn't matter if there wasn't the heaviness. Right? Then it'd just be, oh yeah, well, there's the talking again. But there's a heaviness there, and there seems to be an association between all the talking and the. So just put all of that aside and just go, okay, what is this heaviness? Notice it's the most loving thing you can do. It's the most self-honoring thing you can do. And we need to honor our human selves. We need to find within ourselves that love for ourselves, for our human self, right? Not just the abstract love of the absolute or God or something like that, just the love of this human life and the beauty of it and the mystery of it and the unbearable beauty and simultaneously this ocean of tears. It's a beautiful way I've heard it expressed. And so what's this heaviness? And is it just my heaviness? Is it something from my past? Or is there just a heaviness in the world right now? There is. A lot of confusion, a lot of fear, a lot of heaviness, a lot of grieving going on, a lot of conflict and hatred and anger and malice. Oh. So do the honorable thing, and that is pay attention to the feelings with love, like they matter, because they do. They really do. And those feelings are the doorway to liberation. We can't ignore them. We've tried, doesn't work. We just get more miserable. When you truly surrender, you'll not ask those questions. Trust God, He will take care. You think, who cares of the creatures of the universe? He'll take care of all creatures. You're not separate. True. Totally true. We're not separate. And God is our being. God is simply a word for pure awareness, for Buddha nature, for our pure being. And we have to come to see that life takes care of life, that everything is being taken care of. And that's a trust and a surrender that gets cultivated. It's not a one and done deal. It's something that happens. Oh, I need to surrender this now. Oh, now I'm going to surrender this. Whoa, here's another. Now I can surrender. Ooh, I don't want to surrender this one. I like this one. I don't want to surrender this one. And this is the practice of it. This is why it's a spiritual path, and not just winning the lottery. And as far as I can tell, it has to be this way. He says with a laugh, yeah, it's had to be this way. Four Noble Truths right here. Yep. Hassan, G.P. Walsh, the same trauma I had since birth. I wonder if it could be from past lives or past karma. Birth, I try to keep those feelings suppressed, but 2 years ago I couldn't hide or suppress them anymore. And I'm between feeling them and keeping those emotions trapped. Beautiful. Yes. Okay, here, it's really important. You don't need to know if it's from the past life, past karma, this life, trauma here, trauma there. We don't have to figure that out. It came from somewhere. There was a trauma. It could have been from childhood, where you get a lot of them. It could have been from a past life that's just been carried on. I've seen and experienced both. Right? So when you're little, since birth, yes, of course, the only thing you can do is keep them suppressed. And it's not even you doing it. It's the nervous system that's doing it. And, at birth, a little kid, you don't know how to, your nervous system is simply adapting to the environment. If the environment is not open and loving and accepting of you, feelings are going to be suppressed, repressed, oppressed. And the responsibility then falls on us to reclaim that territory later in life, if we are fortunate enough to run into the teaching or the teacher that can explain to you what is happening and how to do it. And you have, which means this life is the one that heals it. That's what this life is for. This life is for liberation. And so you have to realize none of this is your fault. You're not trying to keep them suppressed. You are open to feeling them. It's just there's a lot of resistance to it, which is just the conditioning you received. And maybe it was an abusive childhood, and so it was severe. And keeping those feelings oppressed became a matter of life and death. Well, it always does to a certain degree. That's what it feels like, because if I'm cut off from my caregivers, I die. So any feeling that brings about their distress or their ire is dangerous and has to be suppressed. And the nervous system does it without your consent. And so that's what's going on. And so now you're becoming conscious of this. It's not your fault. You're not doing it. It is conditioning. This is simply the way the programming is running. And so now your job is to bring this awareness that you have of it, but to bring to it loving kindness, not just, I've got to get rid of this, push them away, it's getting in my way. That's not loving, right? It's just, there's this whole mechanism going on. I'll often refer to it like a rescue dog that's just been trying to survive and keep out of danger, and just assumes the danger is always there. And every time you try to do something to it, it just does this, freezes up, gets belligerent, resist anything it can to just keep you away from doing that, because it's afraid that if any of this gets out, you're going to die. So your job is to make the whole energy system feel so safe that it feels as if it can begin to let this stuff out. And that's the process of inner I call it inner reconciliation, but it's been a part of the meditation, mindfulness for a very long time. It's the words and the neurology and the stuff that I've applied to it are new, but the thing itself isn't, right? Can you come to understand life as it is and bring love to it? That's it. And this is how you do it. And the nitty-gritty of doing it is not easy, because we are deeply conditioned. Right? And we live in a culture that is, the entire culture is traumatized, and it keeps reproducing traumas over and over and over again, faster than therapists and spiritual teachers can cure them. We live in a trauma-inducing world right now, most of us. So we have to become wiser than serpents and harmless as doves. And I have to just keep reiterating, being willing to go into these dark inner parts, dark inner spaces, is the path. There is no other way. You cannot pull an absolute on it and avoid it. I've seen enormous number of people try, they've all failed, including me. And I see some right now, they're going to fail. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing all that, Hassan. Thank you for bringing that here. Ava, your words to Faith. I do not have such life situation, but I must listen to them once more. Faith, thanks. I may sound crazy if I share that somewhere else, but I'm glad that this has happened. Yeah, this time I don't feel punished. I don't feel unlucky. I feel it was an answer, something I prayed for. Oh, Faith. Oh, what that does to my heart to hear that big step forward. I mean, that is just a huge growth on your part. Oh, I don't feel regret of leaving everything in Algeria to come here. I don't feel regret. Some reason I lost my job. Just don't want to hear God and know what to do next. Oh, with a heart like that, my love, God is a sucker for that kind of prayer. She can't refuse. She hears those and goes, oh, damn, okay, I got to do this. So the guys, I can put them off. No. I remember you once told me I need to care about what inside in life will take care of me. Pray for me to pass this experience. I will. I am. Wow. To hear Almighty God or myself what to do. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, God in the highest sense of the word. Not what it's been reduced to, but that God, that the word for that which is simply beyond anything anybody can put into words, but it is pure love. How could it not be? It is one. What's not to love? Jonas, this is the best moment in the last 1 hour in a long time. Oh my God. I can barely sit still from the excitement and ecstasy. Feeling God's presence in and through me and you and the air. And every object and looking up the colors of nature outside the window. Listen to the rest of this magical satsang of yours with headphones. Going out to put my knees on Mama Earth. Faith, trust God will take care of you. Yes, it will. It will. Thank you, Hassan. Another question. This will be the last question. Is enlightenment predestined? No. The way out is the way in, as Muji says. Yeah. No, it's not predestined. Nothing's predestined. The true understanding is beyond destiny and that which is predestined and that which is random or happenstance or just cause arbitrary cause and effect. It's actually beyond that. Right? In a sense, everyone is destined to awaken because well, sleep is temporary. You go to sleep at night, you're going to wake up. It's temporary. Right? And everything that temporary comes to an end, including the string of life we call our lives and our past lives and our karma. All of that emerged out of the vast emptiness and will fall back into it once again. That's nirvana. And so within, you could say that within a human life or multiple lives, you could see patterns that emerge where you could almost predict what was going to happen, right? Because in that, on that realm of the dimension of cause and effect, you can make all little things click together. But when you see that the entire thing has been a dream, then the cause and effect within the dream isn't absolute. It's only an appearance in the dream. And outside of that, everything just is. There's nothing predestined. There's nothing causing this to happen or that to happen. There's no God looking down with his big plan, making it all work out, right? And then punishing you because you didn't play your part. So no. The best way to approach this is simply, this moment is my destiny. As Nisargadatta says, destiny is what happens. So this moment, right now, being with me, asking questions, being with all the people here in our little Sangha and asking questions. That's it. Being fully present. And you are, I can feel it. You're really here. You're really seeking. Your heart is open. Right? So just acknowledge that. That's the enlightenment. That's the enlightened moment. As Suzuki Roshi said, there are no enlightened beings, only enlightened moments. So don't see it as an event, as something that's going to happen. It's right now. Right here, right now, is the only thing you ever experience. Stay here. Learn to keep your attention here. And eventually to learn your attention here and to notice what it is that attention, that is aware of even the attention. Ava, gee, about the so-called faith-based situation, it came to me now. The solution must come from the same place that from the situation comes. How to somehow apply that? Everything comes from the same place. And that place is simply that consciousness that you call yourself. Your mind is the Buddha. And by the mind, I'm not talking about simply the psychological mind, patterns of thoughts, and all that kind of stuff, right? That's the manifestation of it, and we could even use mind in that criteria, but in the Buddhist sense, the way used the word mind, and in some Advaita, mind is capitalized. And it is a good word to use because you can begin to think, like you have a dream at night and it's very real experiences and people stuff. There's all appearances, right? But it's all made of mind, isn't it? It's all happening within the mind. It's all happening within your consciousness. And there's nobody else there but you. So it's a great metaphor for that. So everything arises out of consciousness. The thing is that we believe that somehow the world exists independently of consciousness. And therefore, consciousness is simply localized and through the senses, picking up things that exist objectively. That is the illusion. We're not perceiving something out there. We're projecting something out there. There is no out there. It's all in here. So the bottom line is, it's the essence of all of it is pure, divine, goddess-like love. If we remember that life is loving, and that we can accept life as it is and bring love to it. So it's not like, oh, there's life and then there's me. Because if you look around, life can be kind of harsh, right? Just watch the cheetah chasing the gazelle and the cheetah wins. Life can be harsh. So what if our whole job was to bring love to it? And that everything that happens to us is the invitation for us to open our hearts more than we ever thought possible and bring the love that is so desperately needed right now. I hope that answers the question. I think I wandered off a little bit. Play on. Is it normal to stop falling in love? I experienced many times getting my heart broken when I was younger until those types of feelings just stopped. Because of this, I had a lot of anxiety after I turned 40. Started to date out of panic, but it just felt weird. Now, since my realization, I know that I don't need anyone in my life to be at peace, although it would be fun to meet a lady to share this with. Yeah, of course. Duh. It sure would. Wouldn't it be great to share your realization with somebody? I think that's why we have sanghas and the like, and couples, and to stop falling in love is a result of that trauma, of having a heartbreak. Eventually, the nervous system, which has already been trained into suppression, is just going to assume, you know what, it's not worth it. The pain is greater than the potential for the reward. Right? But in your realization, you're realizing that's not really the case. The potential reward is actually much greater than the pain you may experience along the way. And so here's what I'd recommend. The very fact that you go, wow, it'd be nice to meet a lady that I could share this with, is the opening. That's the healing beginning to happen. Your realization is opening that inner space so that The heartbreaks of the past aren't dominating the conversation. It isn't, don't do it, it's just going to hurt again. Which is not sometimes even in words, but oftentimes just a feeling. But suddenly now that it's open, it's like, wow, it'd be nice, be fun. This be kind of, yeah, this is actually, I think this is actually good, isn't it? So what I recommend that you do is you stay with that feeling of it being fun. Give it equal time. And as you do that, you'll find there'll be resistance to it. And what if you get your heart broken again? Well, yeah, I could. There are no guarantees here. But if not, it could be absolutely blissful. It could be somebody that I could share all this stuff that I'm learning. I could even learn from them. Wow. And maybe we can even create an environment where we can help each other heal from all the shit we've all been through. Yeah, I like this idea. I think this would be great. And yes, it would be worth getting my heart broken maybe again. But maybe I don't have to do that. Maybe it doesn't have to be, a series of heartbreaks, right? Maybe I don't have to kiss a bunch of toads or toadettes in your case. Yeah. So cherish the desire as human, the nature of human life. This is the nature of being human. We don't just have to accept all the grief and the pain and the traumas. We also have to accept the love, the beauty, the intimacy, the sweetness. Oh yeah, that's part of this too. Right. It's not just about healing trauma. Who was it? I can't remember who said it. I was some Zen master saying, don't be so loyal to your suffering. It's okay to be happy. And I mean just, humanly happy. I'm not just talking about the ultimate bliss of content, but it have happy moments, intimate moments, touching moments. It's okay. It's part of the deal. It's part of how our hearts open even more and more and more. And notice the more your heart opens, the more you want to share it. You want to share it with somebody. You ever notice how when you get happy, what's the first thing you do? You want to tell somebody about it. You fall in love, you're on the phone with friends, or it's like, this is great. Look what happened to me. It can't live alone. It's simply joy can't live alone. Which is why the one, which is pure joy, manifests itself as in this infinite variety. The infinite joy of being manifests itself in this infinite fulfillment. Ain't it great? Andy says, special focused love to you, Jonas, and Faith, as you wind your way through this chapter. Asana J2 from Andy. Oh, lovely. Wonderful. Thank you, Andy. So kind. Gee, when you talk about the absolute, can you give us an example from your own life of what that is? I'm having some confusion between the two terms. Well, the absolute is just what is. It's the nature of all things. An example, my life is an example of it, even when it was shitty. Even when I was just an ignorant drughead. That's the absolute. Everything is the absolute. It is the essence of all being, right? You could think of it kind of like this, right? You have a pet dog, and your dog's a Chihuahua, right? But he's a Chihuahua, one of many Chihuahuas, but a unique example of a Chihuahua, right? And of course, the Chihuahuas are examples of dogs, and there's all sorts of different kinds of dogs. And you look and you go, oh, well, that's a dog. You can tell it's not a cat, it's not a mosquito, that's a dog, right? Sometimes they're like with wolves. Oh, yeah, that's a wolf, that's a dog, right? Clearly, and yet every individual is that, and yet it's apparently there's no limit on what you can have in terms of what a dog is. Now just extrapolate that up. A mammal, right? So now it's a mammal, right? Now it's an animal, right? Now it's just a being. And You get all the way to the essence of that of which everything derives its nature. The nature of your little pet chihuahua, if you have one, derives its nature from all chihuahuas and dogs and mammals and on and on and on, and it goes all the way up to you get to being itself, which is the absolute, which is what gives rise to everything. It is the ultimate nature of all things. And so it manifests as the Chihuahua, it manifests as the Rottweiler, it manifests as the cat, as the mouse, as the Bengal cat. I have to point out that out in particular. But what is it? What does it all have in common? It's all being. And that being is the absolute. It is beyond, it cannot be described because only what manifests it can be described. And so in absolutely everything, so everything you look at, right? When you look at your Chihuahua, you're seeing all Chihuahuas, you're seeing all dogs, all mammals, all animals. You're seeing the absolute. How's that? Let me know. Thank you, GP Walsh. You're so welcome, Hassan. My whole life I was searching, seeking, looking for answers to things. I felt I started by reading 40 Rules of Love. The story of Rumi had changed my life. The second one was the New Earth the book. Very good. Written by Tully, and then started watching Muji. Very good. Very good trajectory, my friend. Very, very good. Yes. And your seeking is paying off. Son, faith. Trust is the only way. Yeah. Yes, Ava, I'm curious what to do and how it will be to hear the Almighty. Yeah, same here, Andy. You can say I dealt with it before. I can heal from another heartbreak. Yeah. Yes. Healing from them and healing when you caused them. Yeah. That's hard too. That can turn you off. When you break somebody's heart and you don't want to do that. Right? So it can go the other way as well. I mean, how do you know when you're living in the absolute? How does the fish know it's living in the ocean? Remember, it's not a state of mind. It's not a state of being. It's not something that you arrive in. It's not something that you can or cannot do. You get it? It's the nature of all things. So it's all the absolute. Faith, how to hear, how to know what to do, and to feel safe. Oh, it's from Ava. Well, feeling safe it's all a practice. We just keep practicing it, and we say yes to whatever life brings to us. That's it, my friends. That is the sum total of it. Say yes to what life brings to you. And that's how you hear. That's how you know what to do and to feel safe. If you say yes, that's what you do. You say yes to it. And when you say yes to it, the more you say yes to it, the more you will feel it. You'll feel that sense of being safe. Because it's only our resistance to it. But how are we suffering from living in it? Because the belief is, I'm not living in it. And so it's been divided up. Right? Suffering is what arises in suffering is inevitable to human life, but that means suffering is also part of the absolute. It can't be any other way. And it is the key to awakening to the fact that you are the absolute. It is by embracing things as they are, which will then begin to open the door to seeing through the suffering and how it is nothing but an illusion. An illusion that has risen out of nowhere. As Buddha referred to it as the projections of mind in endless time. So whenever you're suffering from it, whenever you are suffering, you go, oh, I am suffering. I am now living as if I was not the absolute being. I'm living, thinking, feeling. So let me go into this suffering and find out where I'm doing that, where I'm denying my own nature. The last words Buddha spoke were, remember who you are. So I say to you, remember who you are. So when suffering arises, oh, I have forgotten who I am. Let me remember. And the moment I even recognize that there is suffering here, I have taken a step back. And now I can go, okay, what's the cause of this? Where's this coming from? Right? Well, I'm clinging to something. I'm clinging to a sense of identity. I'm clinging to a habit to keep myself from having to experience this. Something that, some old stuff. Right? So now you're actively engaged in being the absolute, because nothing but the absolute could recognize anything. If I was lost in the illusion, I couldn't recognize suffering as suffering. I think I was having fun. And I'm sure you know people like that. They're really suffering and they think they're doing great. And you can tell, and you can see them, and a lot of them are on TV and in politics and the like. Thank you. All are here. Can't stop smiling, laughing, and tear shedding, coming back again and again. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, very good, Jonas. Well, Ava, I don't know. I just try. I pray with hand open as Muslim with hands together. Christian, I pray with heart open, humility, with craving to see, hear him. Beautiful. It's where the light gets in. Very good. Very good. Did I cover it that time, Jay? I know you won't let me off the hook unless I cover it. I know you well enough. I think I got it, because I'm trying to figure out what you meant by your own experience of living in the absolute. Well, you can't live anywhere else. You cannot be outside of absolute truth, can you? There is nothing else but the truth, right? An illusion has to be projected onto truth. So I can say, everything is the absolute. Right? And where I'm experiencing less than love and happiness and joy or any kind of suffering, it means that I have begun to entertain the notion that there is something other than the absolute being, that something exists other than God. That's it. That belief pops up, creates an experience, but it doesn't change the fact that there isn't anything other than God. It doesn't change the fact, right? The mirage doesn't change the desert. You said it wasn't complete. That's why I was confused with absolute and relative. I don't remember exactly the context I said that in. But the absolute is simply the indescribable nature of all things. You can call it Buddha nature, if that's more comfortable. You can call it Brahman, if that's more comfortable. Because they all mean the same thing. It's that which is beyond all descriptions. The absolute cannot be defined by anything. The moment you define it, it's got a form, and now it's not the absolute anymore. But the nature of what appears in our relative experience, the essence of it, the nature of it, is the absolute. It's the only place it could come from. Like your chihuahua is an instance of dog, and dog is an instance of canines, and canines an instance of mammals, and on it goes, all the way down to the essence, which is the absolute, being itself. Everything is a manifestation of being. And so the relative is only a word. It's only a term. And in this world, everything's relative to everything else. And so that's what makes it possible to have this incredible diversity, but it's really only a word. Plan. I understand dating out of panic sounds dumb. But back then it felt like a good idea, probably because of well, it's like, oh my God, I'm never going to have anybody. I totally get it. I feel that maybe fear of meeting someone and get lost again and invest all my happiness is probably still there. Yes, it is. And at the same time, an accumulated wisdom that'll make you much more discerning, much more not so quick to invest the happiness, but you invest a little, you see what the return is. If she's investing that, and you open up a little bit. Does she open up? Does she receive it? Right. And so it doesn't have to be this ta-da, the cue the violins, love at first sight kind of thing. It can be this. It can that can happen, and often does, and it's great. But even when that happens, there's still the need to grow intimacy. Right? Falling in love like that, everything is wonderful. It's great, but it can also be blinding. So whether it's just somebody you're interested in, you feel a nice vibe with them, or if it's just like, an explosion, you still have to take your time. Let the vulnerability out, right? So you can expose something that's vulnerable and see if it's received. Not too vulnerable, right? Gradually. So the trust is built on both sides. She reveals something and you receive it, and honoring and compassionately. And now this is real intimacy. Right? That's where it becomes safer and safer and safer and safer for each of you to join together and grow together. Even though the growing will be very diverse and the like. So let's see, new comments down there. Jace, thank you, G. I'll let you off the hook. But all jokes aside, I get it now. Good. Hassan, we asked GP many questions. Yeah, well, that's why I'm here. It's my gig. There's nothing that's ignored as an illusion. It's happening now, so loving attention is giving. Yes. When you give loving attention to something, the illusion falls away and you see it as it is. And you keep going with that, and you'll see it as the very presence of God. Thanks for your time, Baba GP, for your generosity and compassion. Thank you, Faith. Thank you. Well, questions seem to have slowed down, so perhaps we'll bring it to a close today. I can get on my bike and ride around because it's beautifully sunny today. So thank you all, my dear friends. Thank you so much. I love you all. So see you on Tuesday if you want to catch our upcoming Om School Live with Lisa and myself. And I'll be back here in 2 weeks. In the meantime, we have some other stuff going on. So thank you all, guys. Thank you. Love you.